Mara's needle pierced the ragged gash on her forearm, thread pulling taut through frost-bitten flesh. Blood welled black in the lantern's flicker, but she bit down the hiss, forcing her hand steady over the scarred table. The pain was nothing, winter's bite on a hunt gone sour. But the dream clung worse, its claws sunk deep, her father's voice haggling her price like spoiled grain. The giantess breeds strong, take her for your bloodline's sake. She knotted the stitch, breath ragged, shame flooding hot, as the nightmare bled into waking. 12 years fleeing that barter, building this hut, stone by stone, charms woven into every beam to ward off clan and court alike. No more. Her worth wasn't a whelp in some lord's belly. Hooves crunched outside, shattering the wind's howl. Mara dropped the needle, snatching her ironwood staff as the door rattled under gloved fists. "Hearth! By the Night King's seal, open!" She cracked the door, cold blasting in, revealing 3 riders in sable cloaks, their horses steaming. The lead envoy, a wiry vampire with envoy's braids, thrust a wax-sealed parchment forward, the royal crescent dripping red under lantern light. "Mara Hearth, daughter of the Iron Clan, King Valerian Kale summons you to the Night Court. You will wed him and bear heirs to secure the dynasty. Refusal means treason." Her gut twisted, the words a knife echoing her father's deal. She snatched the scroll, breaking the seal with a snap that echoed her cracking resolve. Ink stark on vellum. "Your blood mends what war broke. Come, or your mountain burns." No plea, no bargain, just command. "No," the word scraped out, final as stone. She crumpled the parchment, tossing it into the fire. "Tell your king I mend my own wounds. He wants heirs? Find a broodmare in the valleys." The envoy's eyes narrowed, fangs glinting. "You dare? The clans sold you fair." "Sold." Mara loomed in the doorway, her 7-foot frame blocking the night, staff gripped like a promise of broken bone. "That's why I'm here. Go back. I'm done being traded." They wheeled their mounts, vanishing into the snow whirl. But the seed rooted. He'd send muscle next. She barred the door, sliding down it, knees to chest. The betrayal replayed, father's grip on her arm at 14, shoving her toward the clan elder's cart. "For the Alliance, girl. Your size, your half-blood, perfect stock." She'd fought, shattered a jaw, fled with nothing but herbs and rage. Never again. Walls up, heart locked. No king would crack her open. Dawn clawed gray through the shutters when the next knock came, polite but iron beneath. Mara rose, staff ready, peering out. A lone knight dismounted, broad-shouldered in polished plate, his tabard the king's silver thorn. So Rowan Tay, she'd heard whispers. The marshal who felled a dozen rebels single-handed, enforcer of the unbreakable oath. "Hearth," he called, voice steady as granite, gloved hand empty. "Rowan Tay, by his majesty's charge. We talk terms, or I drag you bound. Your choice." She unbarred, stepping into the knee-deep drift, towering over him still. "Terms? Your king demands a wife like ordering firewood. I refuse without sanctuary. My life, my choices, mine, until I say otherwise. No hidden blades, no forced seedings." Rowan's gaze flicked to her bandaged arm, then up, unflinching at her height. "Sanctuary's no small ask. The court's a viper nest. Half-bloods like you draw fangs. But," he paused, breath clouding, weighing her like a blade's edge. "Refuse outright, and the Iron Clan pays. Your old kin torched for treason. Accept escort, and I'll carve a vow. Temporary haven, enforced by my blade. No touch without your word. Heirs, only if you will it. Stubborn fire surged in her chest. Vow it here, knight, blood oath, or I vanish into the peaks. He drew his dagger without hesitation, slicing his palm, crimson welling. By steel and shadow, I, Rowan Tay, guardian of the threshold, grant Mara Hearth sanctuary in the night court until she yields it freely. Breach means my life forfeit. He pressed the blade toward her. She slashed her own palm, over the fresh stitches, pain lancing, and clasped his hand, blood mingling in the snow. Accepted, but test me, and your king's dynasty crumbles first. Far below, in the court's obsidian spire, Valerian Kale gripped the scrying basin's edge, the vision rippling as Mara's blood sealed the pact. Through the enchanted water, he'd watched it all, her massive frame hunched over the wound, defiance flaring like forge fire when the envoy spoke. Then that raw barter in her eyes, mirrored too close to his own hollow throne. He exhaled, fangs aching unused. Feared across realms, he'd crushed rebellions with a glance, yet this recluse unnerved him. Gentleness in her herb-stained hands, threading that gash. Sighs that could crush a man, yet held back. Resistance unbowed where courtiers knelt. Heirs, he needed them. The dynasty fraying without pure blood to bind the fractious lords. But her refusal stirred something starved, not submission, but a spark that might warm the void. Rowan mounted, Mara striding beside his horse, staff slung, pack over her shoulder. She glanced back once at the hut, her fortress, before the path swallowed it. Protest burned her throat, but the oath held. Sanctuary, however narrow. The court awaited, a gilded cage, and she'd claw her way free, or forge it into home, on her terms. They rode through veils of snow, the mountain's silence giving way to shadowed vales where ravens wheeled like spies. Mara's mind raced, clan's ghosts, the king's unseen eyes, but Rowan's presence anchored, his silence a shield. "Why bend for me?" she asked finally, voice low. He glanced sidelong. "Duty, and I've seen mountains broken for less. Yours stands." Hours blurred into dusk, the court spires piercing the horizon like fangs. Guards at the frost gates saluted Rowan, eyes widening at her height, murmurs rippling. The giantess, barter bride. Mara straightened, meeting stares, refusal etched in every line. Inside those walls, the game began, no pawn, but player. Valerian released the basin, the water stilling to black. Intrigue coiled tighter than hunger. She came not broken, but armed with will. For the first time in centuries, the throne felt less like chains. Mara dismounted in the vast courtyard, torchlight gilding the marble veins, courtiers peering from arches like predators scenting weakness. Rowan leaned close. "Sanctuary holds. My quarters adjoin yours. Call, and I come." She nodded, gripping her staff, the wound throbbing under bandages. Shame's echo faded under resolve. No more commodity. Let the king hunger for heirs. She'd make him earn every drop. Mara's boots echoed like accusations on the obsidian floor as the throne hall doors slammed shut behind her. Silk-clad nobles lined the walls, their eyes glinting with hungered disdain. Half-blood giant from the mountains, pawn for the king's seed. Whispers coiled. Recluse whore, bred like cattle. Her bandaged wound pulsed hot under her cloak, old shame clawing up from her gut, the memory of her clan's auction block fresh as blood. A robed clerk unrolled a parchment before the throne, his voice slicing the air. By ancient law of the Night Court, Mara Hearth of the Lonely Peak yields her person entire to King Valerian Kale. Clause first, her body for heirs, 3 at minimum, or forfeit to the Crown's justice. Clause second, her lands and craft revert to royal domain upon binding. Clause third, property ledger, Mara cut in, voice low but carrying like a blade through silk. Head snapped her way. She straightened to her full height, towering over the clerk, staff planted firm. Not a marriage vow, a trade. The hall inhaled sharp. The clerk faltered, ink-stained fingers trembling on the scroll. From the throne, carved ebony veined with silver, King Valerian rose, his presence a gravitational pull of shadow and restrained storm. Tall, unyielding, clad in black velvet slashed with crimson, his pale face was a mask of regal frost, golden eyes unblinking. No warmth cracked it, only the weight of centuries pressing down. Yet something flickered deep in that gaze, hunger, not for blood, but the connection he'd buried under law. Mara Hearth, he intoned, voice smooth as oiled steel, echoing off vaulted ceilings where bats stirred in frescoed gloom. You stand in my court by pact of your blood kin. I require heirs to mend this fractured dynasty. Blood of my blood, strong against the dawn wars encroaching our borders. He descended one step, the court's breath held. But hear this, under my law, your safety binds equal to mine. No hand raises against you without my warrant. You enter protected. Protected. The word twisted like a thorn. Her clan had promised safety once too, before chaining her worth to wombs and alliances. Nobles shifted, murmurs rising. Insolent half-breed dares speak? A woman in emerald silks, Lady Elowyn, by the hawk sigil on her throat, leaned forward, lips curling. Silence the mountain cur, Majesty. She mocks the right. Mara's grip whitened on her staff. No bow, no docility scripted for her tongue. Protection in exchange for my blood, my body, my charms stripped from the peaks. Call it plain, your Majesty. I'm no veiled gift. This is a trade, my half-life for your throne's future. And I refuse the ledger's fine print. Gasps rippled like wind through dry leaves. Elowyn's fan snapped open, hiding a sneer that promised venom. Treason! Bind her tongue or her neck. Sir Rowan Tay moved like a shadow uncoiling, his marshal's plate armor whispering as he stepped between Mara and the lady's advance. Broad-shouldered, scarred from border skirmishes, his green eyes fixed on Elowyn with unyielding steel. Lady, the right demands order, not your grudge. Stand down. His voice was gravel low, but his hand rested light on his sword hilt. Enough warning. The court knew his unbeaten record. Even nobles paled. Elowyn hissed, retreating a pace, but her glare bored into Mara. She'll breed monsters or die trying. Half-bloods always do. Rowan's jaw tightened, a flicker of old ruin crossing his face. Memories of his town's fall, perhaps, where vulnerability met power unchecked. He didn't look at Mara, but his stance shielded her flank, bending protocol just enough. Loyalty to the king, yes, but this smelled of something personal, a knight's quiet vow to the defenseless. Valerian raised a hand, silencing the swell. His eyes locked on Mara's, power imbalance crackling the air between them. He the apex predator, she the defiant prey, refusing the snare. Yet he didn't strike, didn't command silence. Refusal noted, he said, voice edged but steady. The pact stands invitation, not chain, yet. Speak your terms, if you dare claim them here. Her pulse thundered, shame's echo warring with resolve. The court watched, eager for her crumble, for humiliation to cloak their own fragile allegiances. But she held his stare, stubborn fire in her veins. Terms? My body consents to no force. Heirs? Only if trust earns it, not law. And my craft stays mine, no crown looting the mountains. Murmurs crested again, but Valerian descended fully now. Close enough she smelled cedar and iron on him, felt the unnatural chill radiating from his skin. The hall blurred to irrelevance. It was them, predator and rebel, breaths sinking in charged silence. His hand lifted, not to strike, but to press something small and cold into her palm. An iron bell, no bigger than a walnut, etched with faint thorns. It hummed faintly against her skin, heavy with promise. "Ring this," he murmured, voice for her alone, golden eyes cracking with buried need. "Anywhere, any time, I come. No questions. Your safety, unbound by ceremony." She closed fingers around it, the metal biting cool. A test. Trust him to answer, or let it rust unspoken. Her wound throbbed sharper, but shame receded. Not property. Not yet. The clerk cleared his throat nervously. "Majesty, the right." Adjourned. Valerian's command snapped like a whip. Nobles bowed, dispersing in whispers, but Rowan lingered, nodding once to Mara. Guardian assigned, anchor glimpsed. She followed him through shadowed corridors, staff thudding, bell heavy in her fist. He led to a side chamber, antechamber to her quarters, where a small figure huddled by a fireless grate. Prince Cassian, Cass, looked up, fragile as frost-kissed glass. Half vampire like her, but child small, eyes wide and shadowed, clothes too fine for his thin frame. No playthings scattered, just a worn book clutched to his chest. The court's surveillance hung implicit, no guards inside, but watchers beyond the door. Cass shrank back at first, stigma's weight in his flinch. Half-bloods weren't heirs here. They were stains, marginalized to edges, fed scraps of tolerance lest they taint pure lines. Mara's chest tightened, echo of her own auction, her worth measured in utility. Used, discarded if barren or weak. "You're the giant?" Cass whispered, voice thread-thin, trauma's silence cracking just enough. She knelt slow, ignoring the protest in her wound, meeting his gaze level. "Mara, and you're Cass. Heard they keep you like a secret." He edged closer, peering at her staff. "They say half-bloods break easy, but you walked in, didn't bow." "Not bowing today." She offered a small charm from her pouch, a pebble etched with mountain runes, warm from her pocket. "Hold this. Call strength when they push." His fingers trembled, taking it, a spark of something alive, flickering. Connection, raw and unbidden. The court marginalized him as they would her, tool or threat, never family. But here, in this stolen moment, she saw the injustice mirror her fear. Used up, then cast aside. Rowan watched from the door, arms crossed, his rule-bending loyalty a quiet shield. "Rest, Mara. Court games sharpen after dark." She nodded, bell in one hand, charm's absence in the other. Valerian's gaze lingered in memory, that hidden starvation peeking through frost. He needed heirs, yes, but this? This was the real trade beginning. Trust for tenderness, or domination's throne, unchanged. Outside, a noble's laugh slithered past, Elowin's, plotting. Stakes rose. No more commodity. She'd ring that bell when earned, not before. And Cass's wide eyes? They'd be her line in the sand. Mara's hand tightened on the arm of her chair as Lord Draven rose from the circle of courtiers, his voice slicing through the hall like a whetted blade. The lonely mountain giant harbors tainted blood, half-breed stock, unfit for the throne. She breeds chaos, not heirs. Accuse her publicly, your majesty, or let the law drag her to trial. Valerian's gaze pinned Draven mid-stride, the king's voice a low thunder that silenced the murmurs. No trial, no protocol binds her here. He rose, black robes pooling like shadow, and extended a hand to Mara, pulling her from the chair into the center of the floor. Courtiers gasped, protocol shattered, the king touching a commoner unbidden. Speak privately, Mara Hearth. The court waits. She followed him to the dais' edge, heart slamming against her ribs, his fingers cool and unyielding on her wrist. The hall's chandeliers flickered, casting his face in hollows of gold and night. Up close, his eyes held no triumph, only a fracture she hadn't seen before. I lost one like Cass before, he said, voice brittle as cracked ice, pitched for her ears alone amid the outraged whispers. A ward, small and half-blooded. The court deemed him weak, culled him in my absence, ruthlessness masked as mercy. I swore no more, not for heirs, not for thrones. His grip slackened, thumb brushing her pulse point, a plea masked as command. Mara's breath caught, the raw edge in his confession hooking into her own scars. She met his stare, refusing the pull to look away. My clan sold me the same way, not for mercy, for coin and alliances. Breed strong sons or die barren, they said, chaining me to a mountain like livestock. I'm no gift, Valerian, just another transaction you can break. His eyes widened, shock rippling across features carved for command. No one spoke to him like that, raw, stripped, her wound laid bare, without venom or plea. The intimacy hit him like venom in the vein. He'd expected defiance, not this mirror of his buried grief. Draven lunged forward then, robes flaring. She admits it. Dangerous blood, harboring rebels in her charms, poisoning the bloodline, seize her. Valerian whirled, shoving Mara behind him with a possessive sweep, his body a wall of coiled power. By king's prerogative, she is under my protection. Accuse again, Draven, and face the void. The hall erupted, nobles shouting, fists pounding chairs, but Valerian's snarl cut them dead, fangs glinting. Dismissed, all of you. They scattered like smoke, Elowin's glare lingering longest, but Rowan stayed, shadow at the pillar's base. Valerian turned back to Mara, chest heaving, the protector in him warring with the king. She'd seen it now, not malice in his iron rule, but a man hollowed by duty's blade, fearing the court that had orphaned him twice over. Loneliness etched his jaw, the same fear that kept her on the mountain, connection as the sharpest trap. Rowan approached as the doors thudded shut, his armored boots silent on marble. He nodded to Valerian, who retreated to the throne with a curt dip of his head, granting the space. Mara, Rowan murmured, voice gravel rough, eyes flicking to ensure they were alone save the king. The envoy's terms, I lied, said refusal meant your clan's slaughter. It was exile for them, nothing more. Had to get you here safe. The roads crawl with assassins, yours and ours. Her stomach twisted, trust fracturing like thin ice. You dragged me into this web on a false threat? Fury sparked, but beneath it, his gray choice, bending rules to shield her, same as he'd bent for border orphans in tales. It complicated everything, this protector who played God with truths. "I'd do it again," he said flatly, no apology in his stance. "You're no pawn to me. Not anymore." Valerian watched from the throne, the exchange pulling at him. Her frankness had cracked his armor. Now Rowan's confession lay at risk atop rawness. This could work, not as dynasty fodder, but something forged in shared fractures. Dangerous, yes, the court bayed for blood. Cass's fragile life dangled as bait. But her refusal to bow, her mirrored pain, it stirred a hunger deeper than thirst. Tenderness, unbidden, uncoiling in his chest. Mara felt it too, the shift like a fault line underfoot. His protection wasn't ownership. It was a shield bought with his own scars bared. Plausible, this union. Not chains, but a stand against the void. Yet riskier now, vulnerability a blade both ways. Cass's wide eyes flashed in her mind, her line in the sand. No more commodity. She'd fight for that fragile maybe, even if it cost her the mountain's solitude. Valerian descended the dais, stopping inches from her, the air thick with unspoken stakes. Stay tonight, not as bride, as witness. His hand hovered near hers, not touching. Consent in the pause. She nodded once, stubborn fire meeting his quiet storm. Witness, nothing more. Until I choose. Rowan's gaze flicked between them, approval shadowed by worry. Outside, Eowyn's laugh echoed faint, plotting unbroken. But here, in the hall's dying light, two fractured souls had traded truths, making alliance not just survival, but a peril worth the gamble. Valerian's quill snapped against the council table, ink splattering the parchment like fresh blood. "Sign it," Lord Draven hissed, his fangs glinting under the chamber's low lanterns. "Or the half-blood marriage crumbles before witnesses. Her freedoms curtailed. No unsupervised ventures beyond the inner keep. No herbs from the wilds without escort. Bind her, Majesty, or we bind you with veto." The other advisors leaned in, eyes cold as grave soil. Draven's faction, ever hungry for leverage over the throne. Valerian's jaw tightened, the weight of the dynasty pressing like chains on his chest. He could refuse, shatter the table with a single command, but that invited fracture. Alliances splintering, Cassian's fragile safety exposed. Mara was no pawn to him anymore, not after last night's truths in the hall. But the court saw only her bloodline's promise. He dipped a fresh quill, the compromise bitter on his tongue. "For stability," he said flatly, scrawling his name under the punitive clause. The paper sealed with a hiss of wax, limiting her to the keep's gilded cage. Mara's fingers trembled as she unrolled the marriage decree in her new chambers, the vellum crackling like breaking bone. The words blurred. Freedoms curtailed, no unsupervised passage, trapping her deeper than her clan's old betrayal. She'd traded truths with him hours ago, glimpsed the man behind the crown. And now this? She stormed the king's private study, boots thudding on marble, bursting through without knock. "You caged me again," she spat, slamming the parchment before him. He rose from his desk, shadows carving hollows under his eyes, but she didn't flinch from his height, or the power humming in the air. Valerian met her gaze, steady but edged with strain. "It's necessity, Mara. The council would have voided the union outright. This keeps you breathing, keeps us intact." His voice dipped, almost pleading. Draven's vipers circle closer. Without this, they'd pick you apart for sport. "Breathing in chains?" She stepped into his space, her half-vampire strength coiling, refusing the bow his presence demanded. "My clan sold me like seed stock. You promised alliance, not another leash." Hurt cracked her voice, but she held his stare, the fragile warmth from the hall curdling into doubt. He reached for her arm, hesitant, seeking consent in the pause, but she jerked back, the power imbalance a live wire between them. Rowan lingered in the antechamber shadows, the decree's hidden annex clutched in his fist. A blood-prick test from Mara's arrival, smudged but legible, proving her lineage too diluted to mandate heirs under old law. It could invalidate the clause outright, free her instantly. His marshal's oath screamed duty. Deliver it to Valerian, uphold the king's compromise. But Mara's eyes last night, raw with old wounds, echoed his own border town ghosts, the vulnerable crushed by decrees. He glanced at the study door, hearing her voice rise. Conceal it, burn it, buy her time to navigate the court, to breathe without the clause's noose tightening. Trust be damned. He'd pay that cost later. With a curse under his breath, he fed the parchment to the brazier, flames devouring the evidence in silence. By dawn, whispers slithered through the court's veins. Mara's blood, purer than the scouts claimed, half vampire, no diluted weed, but a vein of royal potency, ripe for heirs that could eclipse the throne. Lord Draven seized it in the solar, his silk robes whispering as he plotted with two cronies. Any whelp from her belly becomes trophy, he murmured, claws tapping a goblet. Seize them young, claim them as Draven bloodstock. The king's law falters, ours rises. All half-blood brats in court, Cassian included, fair game to flush her out. Laughter low and venomous, the risk blooming. Not just Mara, but every shadowed child under surveillance, marked for the rival's ambition. Valerian moved like winter's blade, summoning guards to Draven's wing under guise of audit. Escort Lady Mara to the inner sanctum, he ordered Rowan flatly, eyes on the reports of the plot. Enforce the clause, no exceptions. It was control incarnate. Quarantine her, starve the threat at source. But to Mara, dragged from her herb stores by armored hands, it reeked of domination. This your safety? She snarled as Rowan led her, reluctant, his face a mask hiding the burned evidence. The fragile warmth shattered. His touch on her elbow felt like Valerian's chains extended. She wrenched free in the corridor, heart pounding against the keep's stone throat. Cassian's small form darted from a side arch, eyes wide, stigma-marked, silent from scars, clutching a wooden carving like a shield. The boy froze, sensing the storm. Mara scooped him close on instinct, protective fire overriding her cage. Draven's plot echoed in her mind. All children trophies. She needed Valerian now, not the king. Her hand slammed the iron bell pull in her sanctum alcove. The private motif, its toll a signal only he answered, rung for true emergencies. The clang reverberated, deep and mournful, but minutes bled into silence. No footsteps. Valerian delayed, counsel wrangling him, or worse, his pragmatism chaining him still. Mara pressed Cassian to her side, the bell's echo mocking. Kenderness unreliable, the king's compromise, a cage widening with every unanswered peal. Rowan's lie burned unseen in the ashes, trust fracturing further as Draven's shadows lengthened toward the vulnerable. Outside her barred door, Rowan's fist clenched. He'd bought time, but at what fracture? Valerian's gaze met his across the hall later, questioning the delay in reports. The night held steady, the cost settling like lead. Long-term faith eroded for a woman's fleeting breath. Elowen's distant laugh pierced the tension once more, unbroken schemes coiling tighter. The alliance teetered, pragmatism's cage snapping shut. Lady Eowyn swept into the throne hall like a storm of silk and spite, her faction's guards flanking her, with Cass dangling limp between them, his small wrists bound in silver chains that burned his half-blood skin. The boy's pale face twisted in silent agony, eyes wide but voiceless as always, and the court gasped in the charged hush. Mara shoved through the frozen nobles from her shadowed alcove, heart slamming against her ribs. She couldn't let this happen, not to him, not after the fragile threads of trust they'd spun. "Release him," Mara growled, planting herself between Eowyn and the dais, her towering frame blocking the path. Cass's chains rattled as the guards yanked him back, his bare feet scraping marble. Whispers rippled. The lonely mountain giant, half-blood bride-to-be, daring to defy a high lady. Eowyn's lips curled, her voice slicing the air. "See, your majesty? Half-bloods are vermin, expendable. This whelp proves it, weak, silent, a drain on our purity. Cull them now, before your heir joins their ranks." Valerian's throne loomed at the hall's end, his form rigid as obsidian, eyes flickering crimson. Mara glanced his way, pleading silently, "Don't let them, not like this." But Eowyn's guards tightened their grip, and Cass whimpered, a thin line of blood trickling from his wrist where silver met flesh. The king's voice boomed like cracking stone. "Seize the traitors!" But it wasn't guards who moved first. Valerian launched from the throne in a blur of shadow and fury, fangs bared, claws extending as he tore into Eowyn's nearest man. Blood sprayed in an arc, the guard's scream cut short as Valerian's hand crushed his throat. Chaos erupted, nobles scattering, Eowyn's faction drawing blades. But the king was a whirlwind of lethal precision, ripping limbs and snapping necks with public savagery that echoed off vaulted ceilings. One guard lunged at Cass. Valerian intercepted, slamming the man into the floor with a skull-shattering crunch, gore pooling beneath. Mara froze mid-step, the metallic tang flooding her throat, memories crashing. Her clan's auction block, chains biting her own skin, as bidders prodded her like livestock, her worth bartered in blood and force. This was it, the brutal ruler she'd always feared, proving her a tool in his war of fangs and dominance. Cass dangled forgotten in the melee, his body jerking as a stray blade grazed his side during the guard's desperate scramble. "Rowan!" Valerian roared over the din, and the knight burst from the sidelines, sword flashing to cut down two more. But as Rowan hauled Cass free, yanking the chains loose, Eowyn's voice pierced the fray from her knees, bloodied but unbroken. "Your marshal lied, Majesty. He delayed reports on the bride's hysterics, hid her rages to buy her time." Mara's blood iced. Rowan? The one who'd stood sentinel at her door, who'd sworn his shield was hers. His eyes met hers across the blood-slick floor, a flicker of apology, but it shattered her. Betrayed again, pawn again. Everyone uses you, Mara, until you're spent. She backed away, boots slipping in viscera, chest heaving. "No more," she snarled, voice raw. "I'm done being your leash, king. Control someone else." She turned, shoving past gawking courtiers toward the mountain gate at the hall's rear, a towering archway carved from her home's own stone, the only exit to the wild slopes beyond. Rowan called after her, "Mara, wait!" But she didn't. The gate's wards hummed under her palm as she forced it open, cold wind whipping her hair. "Tell him I won't be caged. Not for heirs, not for thrones. I'm leaving. Cass's injury hit like a delayed thunderclap. As guards dragged the boy to the healers, his side wept crimson. Ribs cracked from the crush of bodies. Valerian stood amid the carnage, chest heaving, hands dripping red. Eloin's faction broken, heads mounted on pikes by dawn as warning. But victory soured as medics swarmed Cass, the child's frail form convulsing on a bier. Too rough, the lead healer muttered, fangs retracting in grim focus, silver poisoning the wound. His blood's too thin for this brutality. Valerian knelt beside the bier, a rare tremor in his iron frame, fingers hovering over Cass's bandaged side without touching. The boy stirred, eyes locking on his, trust fractured, pain etching lines too deep for one so young. This was the cost. His old strategies, force as first resort, had rent the very fragile thing he'd sworn to shield. Gentle protection? A lie he'd told himself. His rule devoured the innocent, just as hunger clawed his veins. Mara's absence echoed louder than screams. She'd fled through the gate an hour past, silhouette vanishing into mist-shrouded peaks, fulfilling every scar she'd carried. Unlovable, dangerous, a commodity to be wielded and discarded. The bond they'd glimpsed, stolen glances in herb gardens, his hand steadying hers over wards, shattered irreparably. She was right to run, Valerian thought, throat tight. The court watched him now, expectant, but he saw only her back turned, the mountain swallowing her whole. He rose, wiping blood from his face, gaze fixed on the open gate. Force had replicated her clan's auction, bodies broken for power, vulnerability commodified. If unchanged, his throne would always wound those he ached to save. Cass gasping on the bier, Mara alone in the wilds. Old patterns won, tenderness starved. Rowan approached, chainmail dented, face ashen. "She won't return, sire, not after this." Valerian didn't answer, the weight settling eternal. The alliance teetered into ruin, pragmatism's cage sprung wide, but empty. Shouts erupted from the shadowed galleries like fangs unsheathing, a dozen noble voices baying for Mara's blood, or her womb, it hardly mattered. "The half-breed defies the throne," Lord Vesper snarled, his crimson cloak whipping as he surged forward, flanked by armored retainers who drew steel with a rasp that echoed off the vaulted throne room. Mara's hand tightened on the arm of her chair, her half-vampire strength coiling like a spring. But Rowan's gauntleted grip pinned her in place beside Valerian, his whisper fierce in her ear. "Not yet. Let him break first." Valerian's silence shattered under the onslaught. He rose from the throne, a tower of unyielding black velvet and pale fury. His eyes, those storm-gray depths she'd glimpsed, starving for more than blood, now locked on Vesper. The air thickened with the metallic tang of drawn blades, and the nobles' opportunistic snarls, their uprising a viper's nest, uncoiling at her return. They'd waited for this fracture, her refusal to birth their pawns, the spark to claim her outright, throne be damned. Whispers of rebellion had simmered since dawn. Now they boiled over, guards loyal to coin shifting toward the lords, the court's fragile web ripping wide. "You dare!" Valerian's voice cut like obsidian, low and lethal, halting the advance mid-stride. Mara felt the tremor in the stone floor, his power rippling outward, but he didn't unleash it, not fully. His gaze flicked to her, a breath-held plea buried in the king's mask, then to the boy, huddled at the dais' edge. Cassian, small and silent, clutching a tattered cloak like a shield. The child who'd cracked his loneliness, now the uprising's soft target. Preserve the throne, or them? The choice clawed his face raw. Vesper laughed, a wet, triumphant bark. Your decrees chain us, Kale. She returns, rejects the blood right, and you waver? We'll take the giant spawn by ancient claim, tear it from her if need be. The Night Court bends to strength, not sentiment. Blades glinted higher. A crossbow twanged from the balcony, bolt whistling toward Valerian. Rowan lunged, shield slamming up. The shaft splintered, but chaos bloomed, retainers clashing in a frenzy of steel and snarls. Valerian didn't flinch. He stepped forward, empty hands raised, voice booming over the melee. Enough! The word pulsed like a heartbeat, freezing half the room, his thralls, his true loyalists, snapping to heel. Hear the king's annulment. Gasps rippled. Mara's pulse thundered in her ears. He was doing it, throwing stability to the pyre. The punitive clauses of the old blood pact are void. No noble claims offspring by force or right. Aristocratic houses forfeit rights over heirs born of this union, or any union under crown protection. Violations mean exile, permanent. Murmurs exploded into outrage. Vesper's face twisted, veins bulging black under translucent skin. Madness! You'll fracture the realm. Fracture it cleaner than your greed. Valerian's decree unfurled like dark silk, scribes at the dais frantically inking the proclamation on gilded parchment, seals slamming wax hot. He sacrificed it all, alliances crumbling as lesser lords paled, realizing their leverage gutted. Political stability traded for the vulnerable, for her, for Cass, for the family he'd never dared name. Mara's chest ached. His eyes met hers again, stripped bare, the feared alpha begging without a word. Choose me, it said, or walk. The skirmish sputtered out, Rowan's knights herding Vesper's men back under drawn bows. Silence fell, brittle as frost. All eyes pinned on her, Mara Hearth, the mountain giant, recluse no longer. Independence screamed safety. Bolt now, back to herbs and solitude, no more transactional chains. But the boy whimpered, Cassian's fragile form curling tighter, and Valerian's hand hovered near hers, not touching, waiting consent in the teeth of his own ruin. She stood, towering over the court, her broad frame casting long shadows. Stubborn fire burned through the freeze of old wounds, sold once, never again. Marriage? Her voice rang clear, no quiver. Not as pawn, not for heirs alone. Gasps. Valerian's jaw tightened, but he nodded once, sharp. Conditions. I choose when and if children come. No claims on them, yours or theirs. Cassian under my watch, too, communal, protected. And you? She faced him square, voice dropping intimate amid the stairs. Proved tenderness isn't thrown games. Risk for us, not rule over us. The court held its breath. Valerian's nod came slower, eternal weight lifting fractionally. Agreed, freely. Power imbalance acknowledged, consent carved in stone. Murmurs shifted, shock, not all hate. Rowan stepped forward then, helm under arm, face scarred and steady. The lie was mine, he said, voice gravel over the hush. He'd hidden her mountain flight, bent rules to give her space, consequences crashing now, demotion whispers already slithering. Enforced the king's will blind, sheltered what mattered. Punish me. His eyes met Mara's, anchor to anchor. No excuses, just the cost. She searched his face, betrayal's sting thawing under his unflinching stand. You bent for the right reasons, stand enforcer still, for the new law. Begrudging words, but forgiveness landed solid. He exhaled, shoulders easing, mediator forged stronger. Valerian turned to Cassian, kneeling. The king knelt, to the boy's level. No more shadows alone. The child blinked up, trauma's silence cracking with a tiny nod, fingers uncurling from the cloak. Communal care sealed in the decree. Nursemaids from trusted houses, Mara and Valerian as first guardians, legal wards unbreakable. Cass reached out, tentative palm to the king's. Valerian enclosed it gently, a small recovery blooming. Color in pale cheeks, first whisper of trust. Tenderness built this, laws bending to cradle it. The throne room exhaled into wary order. Vesper and his ilk dragged off under guard, exile looming, the court forever scarred. Mistrust festering in corners, old guard glaring from galleries. Imperfect, raw-edged, but realigned. Bonds chosen, not bloodlines enforced. Whispers of fracture hummed, but knights saluted sharper, servants moved with new purpose. Valerian rose, offering Mara his arm, not seizing, offering. She took it, agency her stride, stepping forward not as giant pawn, but partner. His touch lingered, slow burn heat, under cool skin. Breath pausing as their eyes locked. Loneliness met, power yielded. The alliance held,